Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon. Something a little bit different today. We're going to do another tier list video. I think you guys generally seemed to like that the last time when I covered the Switch JRPGs that I'd played. So I wanted to do it again. For one thing, this is a little bit easier of a video to put out, and I don't want it to seem like I don't want to put in the effort for you guys. I do, I really do. But I'm having surgery tomorrow as of the filming of this video, so I'm probably going to be out of commission for a little while. Plus with the holidays coming up, I just want to make sure I have some stuff available for you to watch so you don't feel like I've abandoned you, because I haven't. I'm just infirm. Anyway, with the Switch out of the way, I wanted to cover all of the JRPGs that I've played on Nintendo handhelds. So that, for those of you keeping track, would be systems like the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, and Nintendo 3DS. Is the Switch technically a handheld? Sure. But, I mean, you get it, right? Like, we're covering the standalone handhelds now. This list, as you can see, is, I think it's 21 games, and I'm pretty sure I'm not missing any. There's a chance that there's some that I played maybe digitally that I'm forgetting about. I don't know. I don't know. I'll do something to indicate that I screwed up and let you know what games I missed. But I think this is it. So we're going to go through these games. I'm going to rank them from S to D, and we're going to definitively say how good these games are in relation to all the other JRPGs on Nintendo handhelds. Actually, and looking at this, I don't think I have any on here that are on the standard Game Boy. I don't think I don't know. I played a tiny bit of like Final Fantasy Legend back in the day, but not enough that I would say I'm comfortable ranking it, if that makes sense. So I don't think I really played any JRPGs on the Game Boy. Game Boy Color, different story. So we'll get there. All right. How do I want to do this? What order? Last time I went randomly, and that worked. So, but this time I have a clear sort of, differentiation between systems. So maybe I'll go chronologically, at least in terms of the console that the games were released on. I don't actually know the release dates of all these games, so I can't do it chronologically within each console group. I mean, I could, but I'd have to look up dates online, and who has time for that? Right? Nobody got time for that. All right, so starting with the Game Boy Color. What Game Boy Color games do I have on here? Dragon Warrior 1 and 2. So it's a fact, it's a known fact at this point that Dragon Warrior on the Nintendo Entertainment System was my first JRPG ever. The first JRPG I ever played. And I didn't get anywhere as a kid. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I don't know, 6, maybe 7, something like that. Real dumb kid, couldn't figure it out. But it was great. Like I said, it captured my imagination in a way that other games just hadn't. And, presenting you with this big world that's like so much bigger than just like a 2D plane that you're running back and forth on, which is, most every game I'd played up to that point was like that. And I mean, even a game like The Legend of Zelda, which I'd of course played by that time, this felt even bigger than that, right? Like, I don't know if it was because Zelda used the scrolling screens or what, but just the expansiveness of this world was just something else, and I loved it. I purchased the Game Boy Color remakes of Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 on a single cart, and I finally, as a grown man in my 30s at the time, I completed Dragon Warrior on the Game Boy Advance, and I felt nothing. No, I'm just kidding. I felt a decent sense of accomplishment, having finally conquered this game that I had struggled with as a kid, coming back to it as an adult and just crushing it, just absolutely crushing it, because good at video games, very good at video games. So, and then Dragon Warrior 2, I got almost all the way through Dragon Warrior 2 on the Game Boy Advance, and I got to maybe just before the last dungeon, and there was a difficulty spike that just about wrecked me, just about ruined my life. So I admit that I gave up, But I feel like I got the gist of it. I got the gist of it, right? I played through the vast majority of the game. So I feel comfortable ranking it. You know, it's an old game. These are old games. So despite the fact that Dragon Quest as a series is so important, so popular, so meaningful to so many people, I don't feel like it had the same impact on me. And that's, again, to say nothing of its quality. They are obviously fantastic games. For me, I feel like it was a B, right? Just because, you know, I would never call Dragon Quest 1 and 2 a C tier game. Never. Like, are you kidding me? They changed the world. But looking at them through the lens of a guy in 2020, is it still 2023? I can't, yeah, I mean, it's a B tier for me. So if you feel differently, please let me know down in the comments. And yeah, just rake me over the coals if you need to. I understand. All right, what else we got? Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color. We have Lufia, The Legend Returns. So I was a big fan of the Lufia games on Super Nintendo. Have you played those? They're pretty good. Lufia 1 is... Lufia 1's a little more of a, I don't know, milquetoast? Is that an appropriate word to use for a game? It's sort of just vanilla, and it's not anything extraordinary. I still really enjoyed it, particularly for the music. There are some themes from the original Lufia game that I have in my head to this very day. I love the music in that game, and something about the quest that you go on really resonated with me. I don't think I owned it as a kid, but I rented it multiple times. And I would keep, you know, get the game a few weeks later after I'd returned it, and somebody had erased my save, of course, because that's what happened with rental stores. Kids these days don't understand the struggle. They don't get the struggle, the rental store struggle. But I would always get up to the same point in Lufia and just get destroyed, and I could never get past it. I finally did as an adult, and I mean, I don't know, the game doesn't really get much better. It's fine. It's pretty good. Lufia 2, on the other hand, was like amazing, just fantastic. Combined dungeon crawling, puzzle solving, like sort of, I mean, I don't know if you would call them Zelda style puzzles, but like block pushing, switch triggering type puzzles, stuff that you don't typically see in your standard JRPG. So very cool, very interesting stuff. The battle system was really fantastic. It had a monster capturing and training mechanic that was still a pretty, I guess, relatively new thing. So, at least for us, right? I mean, I don't know when it came out in relation to Dragon Quest V, but anyway, it was just a fantastic game. And it was a prequel, and it was like one of the few games or few stories that really did a prequel right. It really just nailed what a prequel can be if it's done well. So yeah, Lufia is a series that, despite not having a ton to it, is something that's pretty meaningful to me. So I picked up Lufia: The Legend Returns, and based on the fact that it was on the Game Boy Color, I didn't have the highest of expectations for it. It felt like, I don't know, just several tiers lower. I assumed it would be several tiers lower than especially Lufia 2. But even Lufia 1, just being a handheld RPG. Because, I mean, nowadays, you look at like a 3DS JRPG, and it can be just as good or better than some console JRPGs. But back in the day with the Game Boy, I don't feel like they ever really got those JRPGs to the same level as consoles. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know if you agree with that, but if you do, maybe you can see why I kind of assumed it would just be a similar kind of experience, a lower tier game. And, I mean, in this case, I think I was right. Lufia: The Legend Returns is actually a full-on storyline sequel to the original Lufia. So it's, I guess, the furthest game along in the chronology, which is cool. I didn't actually expect that. I expected it would be completely disconnected and spun off into its own thing, but it's actually a sequel to Lufia, which is cool. It has a really interesting battle system where you have 9 party members, which feels like too many, yes. But the way it works is only one character in each column of your characters can attack at a time, per turn or whatever. And so there's some strategy in how you position your characters and what you have them do. So it's not a bad game by any means, and especially for a Game Boy JRPG, it's pretty solid. I think that I would rank this as a B. It's not going to change your life, but it is still, like I say, pretty solid. Okay, I'm talking a lot. I'm like 10 minutes into this video, and I've got 2 games up there, 2 games up on the tier. Let's move it along. All right, Game Boy Advance is next. Game Boy Advance. What do we have here? We have Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. This was the Mario RPG series that I was most excited about when, after the original Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo, then Nintendo brought out Paper Mario on the N64, which I thought was kind of cool, but I didn't really get into it. It didn't have the same effect on me that Mario RPG did. But this one looked a lot more like that. And it turns out, I found out, just not even that long ago, that some of the core team members behind Super Mario RPG actually spun off and formed the company that makes the Mario and Luigi series. Like the director of Super Mario RPG is, I believe, the director of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. And Yoko Shimomura does the music. So it's sort of a reunion of some of the key members of that team, which is maybe why Mario and Luigi as a series appeals to me more than Paper Mario. Could be. So this is great, funny, entertaining, good battle system. I'm going to call Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga an A. It's an A tier game for me. Are you disappointed I didn't put it in S? I don't know. I don't know what it would have had to have done to be an S tier game for me, but it feels right. Feels right. It's an A tier game. All right, what else do I have on Game Boy Advance here? I've got Sword of Mana. Sword of Mana. Sword of Mana, as I understand it, is a remake of the Final Fantasy Adventure, or Seiken Densetsu in Japanese, the original Mana game. I'm trying to make myself say Mana, because even though I've always said Mana, and I would think that it should be Mana, in the English dub of the Secret of Mana remake, they all pronounce it Mana. So it feels, I don't know, deviant for me to say Mana now. And I don't like this feeling, this tension that I have inside between wanting to say it right and wanting to say it the way the canon characters pronounce it. This is my battle. This is not for you to worry about. This is something that I need to deal with in my own heart. Anyway, Sword of Mana is a really solid action RPG. I feel like it's a fine entry to the Mana series, especially when so many of the Mana games are kind of, if we're being honest, middling. There haven't been a ton of great Mana games post Sword of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3, or Trials of Mana. Maybe that's controversial. I know Legend of Mana has its fans, and I don't have a problem with that. Dawn of Mana, I mean, I don't know. The new one, the new Mana game looks freaking awesome. Like they're making it a AAA game, which is exciting, right? I mean, are you excited about the new Mana game? Let me know, because I want to talk about it. But Sword of Mana is another great game. I would rank it an A as well. So, is this a pattern? I mean, my Game Boy Color games are Bs. My Game Boy Advances are A's. Are DS going to be S's? And 3DS going to be some level that doesn't exist? No, I can promise you that's not going to be the case. Okay. Moving on to, let me just double check. Am I missing any Game Boy games? I'm not. We covered them. All right. Let's move on to the DS. Nintendo DS. I've played a decent number of Nintendo DS role-playing games over the years, and I'm going to talk about them now. Sands of Destruction. I'll cover this first. I cannot tell you how excited I was for Sands of Destruction. Masato Kato was the writer and I believe director of this game. Masato Kato being Xenogears writing, Chrono Trigger writing, Chrono Cross writing, directing. Like, big name in some of the biggest games for me. So I was pumped. Yasunori Mitsuda coming to do the music. Do I even need to say Yasunori Mitsuda? Duh, I'm there, right? I don't know, friends. I don't know. I did not care for Sands of Destruction. Now, to be fair to Sands of Destruction, I tried to play it during a period of time where I was not as into gaming as I was before and as I am now. So it's possible that there were some elements of the game that bothered me too much to continue then that would not bother me now. So I have repurchased the game. It's on my shelf, and I am going to give it another shot. Because, like I said, maybe as a more fervent game enjoyer today, I will enjoy it more. But at the time, I don't know, it just did not click with me. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know it was sort of a mixed kind of reviews sort of game, leaning negative. But at the time, I didn't know that. At the time, I know I had this nostalgia for these particular creators that were working on it, and I was just excited for an experience that would give me a similar feeling to those games that they made in the past that I loved. Felt like I didn't get that and was disappointed. So I think for now, I have to rank this as a C. And if I play the game here in the future and change my mind about it, I will be sure to let you know first. All right, what do we have next? We have, let's see. Those are 3DS. Chrono Trigger. Well, as long as we're talking about Masato Kato and Yasunori Mitsuda, let's get Chrono Trigger out of the way. Chrono Trigger is my favorite game of all time. I feel like the DS version of Chrono Trigger is the definitive version of Chrono Trigger. It adds the new elements that I think are pretty cool, and it, reconfigures the battle system, so you've got your commands and menus on the bottom screen, which is cool. Kind of frees up that upper screen just to display the graphics. Very cool. I have nothing but good things to say about Chrono Trigger DS, and it's a D. No, it's an S. That's an S tier game. If I put Chrono Trigger anywhere but S, what would you think of me? What would you think of me? I can't do that. I couldn't do that to you all. No way. What do we got? Dragon Quest IV. Chapters of the Chosen. Love those chapters. Dragon Quest IV was the first Dragon Quest game I think I played since Dragon Warrior on the Nintendo. I'm pretty sure I played that before I played 8. Doesn't matter. Dragon Quest IV on the DS is fantastic. The whole DS trilogy of remakes of 4, 5, and 6 are really good. I can say 4 and 5 for sure because I've played them. 6 I've only dabbled in just like the introduction, mostly because I was grabbing footage for another video. But I assume that it is similarly good, even if the game itself is maybe not as beloved as like 5 or even 4. But so Dragon Quest IV is great. It's the story is set up a little bit differently than a lot of the other ones, where you play these different chapters for each of the main characters in the party, and then the final chapter is all of the characters coming together under the hero to vanquish the evil. I mean, it's Dragon Quest. It's not going to blow your mind with like some complicated twisting storyline. It's Dragon Quest, but it's a lot of fun and it's charming as all heck, and I really love it. I'm gonna give it an A. It's getting an A. Getting an A from me. Dragon Quest V, similarly, is a Dragon Quest game, and it's great. This is one in which it's multi-generational, so you kind of choose who you're going to marry. I guess all the ladies that you can choose to marry love you as well. I don't know, it feels weird to me. I was just talking about this on Twitter with somebody. It feels weird to me when like romanceable characters in a game, like you can just choose them and they're like, okay, let's get married or whatever. It's like, do I not have any responsibility as a player to like make them also want to marry my character, right? Like, I don't know. It feels like having a person as a reward for gameplay is weird. Like, if you want to gamify romance in a game, well, let's gamify romance. Let's make there, be goals and the ability to fail. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But you can marry people in this game and have a kid, and the kid continues the adventure. And I don't know if this was the first game to do that, but some other games have done it, I believe. But Dragon Quest V is a classic and beloved, and it is a solid A for me. I feel like the only Dragon Quest game that I would ever probably put in an S tier, at least right now, because I haven't played them all, is 11. 11 is an S tier game for me, but the rest of them, even at their best, I feel like I love them at the A level. And everybody's different, everybody's gonna have preferences and stuff, of course. I feel like that's where I fall with Dragon Quest games generally. It took a game like Dragon Quest XI to really kind of push me over the top in my enjoyment. But again, that's not to say anything. If Dragon Quest games are all S tier for you, more power to you. I think that's great. I'm that way with certain games too, that you might also think are, you know, good, but maybe not that great. Anyway, all that heeing and hawing out of the way, let's look at what other DS games we have. We have Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV on the Nintendo DS. This was the 3D remake that they did sort of in a similar style to the Final Fantasy III DS. Oh, that's one I forgot. Here it is. Anyway, we're talking about 4 right now, but thanks for reminding me about 3. So Final Fantasy IV DS, remake, 3D, great stuff, beautiful music, moving story, voice acting. They put voice acting in it. That was pretty interesting, right? I thought it was good. It was a much harder game than I think the base Final Fantasy IV was. Certainly harder than the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy II that we got, which was the easy type because Americans have the dumb brains. And, you know, Final Fantasy IV, classic game. I'm a huge Final Fantasy IV fan. I think I would probably rank the original as an S. I think I'm gonna rank DS as an A. Is it objectively a worse game? No, I don't think so. It's the same game, right? More or less. But we're going off of my gut here, and I guess that's what my gut is saying. So I have to follow my gut / my heart. And that's what they're saying. They're in agreement, my gut and my heart. All right, so since I added Final Fantasy III to this list, let's talk about Final Fantasy III real quick. Final Fantasy III is fine. I don't know. Final Fantasy 2 and 3 are games that I cannot get enthusiastic about. I know that, you know, 2 was a big step up over 1 in terms of story and presentation, right? That was a big deal. And 3 was a really big expansion of the gameplay in ways that we hadn't seen before at the time. But by the time we got those games, we had already had Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 6 and seeing where the series was going. So trying to go back and play these games, even in their 3D remake state, they aren't as exciting to me. They're not as moving. And I've never been huge into the job system. I don't get excited about the job system. Let's say that. I think it's fine. I think it's a good, effective system for a game to use. Final Fantasy, Octopath, sort of, Bravely Default use it. It's an effective and good system, but I don't get excited about it, and the fact that Final Fantasy III was sort of the origin of that doesn't tip the scales for me. I'm gonna put it in C. It's yeah, putting a Final Fantasy game in C. I don't know. It's rough. I'm sorry. It's rough. It's rough, but that's just the way it fell. That's the way it fell this time. Finally, on the Nintendo DS, right? Yes, I think. Finally, I have Nostalgia, which is maybe props to them for being forthcoming and honest about what they're doing. This is a game that is designed to make you feel nostalgic for the old school RPGs you grew up with. It has airships. You get an airship basically from the get-go, and turn-based battles, and you know, it's okay. It's kind of dull. It's okay though. I can't think of anything super wrong with it. Yeah, there's nothing super wrong with it. I wouldn't call it a C, would I? Yeah. I don't know. Feels like a C. It's just, you know, it has a lot of the elements that would make a game I would be excited about, but I don't find myself getting excited when I think about it. And I wasn't excited when I was playing it. So, yeah, I guess. All right. We've left behind the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance and the DS. We are on to the 3DS, what was possibly Nintendo's last standalone handheld console. So there are a ton of role-playing games, as many here on the 3DS as I had entirely on all the other systems. So it's a big one for me. So let's get into it. I'm going to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3D first. Xenoblade Chronicles 3D was the first way that I experienced Xenoblade Chronicles, and I did not love it. Did not love it. And this is more due to the fact that, for whatever reason, trying to play it on the handheld, small screen, I was not able to fully grasp the gameplay, so I kept getting stuck and not having a great time with it. I don't know if they substantially changed the gameplay from that to the Switch Definitive Edition. I don't think they did, because the Switch Definitive Edition I enjoyed quite a bit and I got through it without a problem. So I don't know what the issue was, but for whatever reason, I didn't have a good time with Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, and I abandoned it, I don't know, probably a dozen hours in. So I didn't see a ton of it, but I'm gonna rank it as a B just because, like I said, it didn't feel, it wasn't fun for me. It just wasn't fun, but I knew, even then, I knew that there was a Tetsuya Takahashi game in there. I could see it, I could feel it, but I couldn't get to it. So that was the frustration I had with that. Stella Glow. Stella Glow is a tactical waifu kind of game, I think. You have witches and you go into strategy RPG battles with them and fight bad guys. And I took it with me on a work trip and played it and found it kind of boring. And I don't think that I don't hate it, but it's gonna be a C. Give me a C for me. Okay. The Alliance Alive. The Alliance Alive is from Furyu. I generally love Furyu. I think they make really great games, not always on the biggest budgets, but they manage to do a good job with what they have. I think the creative team over there is generally pretty good, and I frequently agree with their decisions and what they choose to do. So Alliance Alive was great. I reviewed it for, I want to say, Cog Connected back in the day, or was it Anime News Network? I don't know. I reviewed it for some publication, so I got it free as a download to review, but I liked it enough that I went out and picked up the physical copy of the game as well. So, I mean, that tells you something, right? I didn't have to pay for this game. I'd already finished it and then still chose to pay for it, so that's good. I would call the Alliance Alive an A. It is similar in a lot of ways to the Saga series, which I find very hit or miss, the Saga series. The gameplay is similar in that you sort of level up stats randomly and learn skills randomly. It's very much in that vein, the sort of chaotic systems of the Saga games. But there's a really interesting and compelling story about humans rebelling against the monsters that have taken over the world and are sort of keeping them as slaves or whatever. So it's a very cool game, and it's on now on every modern console. I think they brought it over to the PS4 and PS4 and Switch, at least, as a remaster, so you should check it out there if you haven't already. Let's talk about Crimson Shroud. Crimson Shroud is an interesting one. I'm pretty sure it was digital only, because it's a little bite-sized game. You can finish it in probably a couple of hours. It is a JRPG in that, the battles are turn-based in that way, and it is essentially a tabletop role-playing one-off campaign that you are playing through. And to further drive that point home, all of the characters that you play as, all the monsters, everything are these little pieces, like little game pieces. And that's how the story is told. And so the camera will have these dramatic angles and stuff, but these are all just like little wooden figurines that are the characters. Very, very interesting. Just like such a super cool concept. It's got a compelling little story that it tells in its short runtime. And there's only I don't know how many battles there are in the game, a dozen, something like that. It's everything is kind of staged, right? Like it's scripted sort of battles. You don't have random encounters or anything like that. But it's just really, I don't know, it's really interesting. And I'm gonna give it an A if for no other reason than I think developers should experiment more with things like that, these little one-off short adventures. I think it was in my last tier video, the Switch, I put The Longest 5 Minutes as an S tier, and some people were like, what is your problem? Who hurt you? You are broken. I can understand if you are looking at video games from the perspective of video game A equals video game B, like they're the same thing, then I could see ranking a short little weird game like the Longest 5 Minutes higher than, you know, a game like Xenoblade Definitive Edition, which I think I did, would be confusing and weird. But I don't see video games or even JRPGs as being equivalent to each other. I see them sort of like I do other forms of literature or films, right? Like not every piece of literature is a novel. Some literature is short stories, some are poems, and I don't know, I see some of these games as more like a poem, right? So like The Longest 5 Minutes, I would call that the equivalent of a moving and beautiful poem, whereas a game like Xenoblade Chronicles, I would say that's a novel, right? Live Alive or Octopath Traveler, that's a book of short stories, right? So like these games are all different and they all occupy different spots in my brain, and that's why I can rank them this way, because they're not all equivalent to each other. If anything, it would make more sense to rank them against other games that do a similar thing, but I don't got the time for that, so we're just gonna do it this way. All right, what do I got next? I need to move this along because it's been like 30 minutes, and this is, you know, you probably are sick and tired of hearing my voice, so I'm gonna get through this. Don't worry, I'm gonna get through it. I have Corpse Party on here. Corpse Party is not a JRPG. I can't fool you. I can't fool you. You know it's not a JRPG. I know it's not a JRPG. Pretty sure it was originally made in RPG Maker, so I put it on here just because I wanted to. And I'm just gonna rank it because that seems fun to me. So we're gonna put Corpse Party. Corpse Party is an A. I'm sorry. I know it's weird and it's gory and gross and horrific, but I'm all of those things, so I like it. No, I enjoy good horror properties, and I feel like Corpse Party is a good horror property. Even the later games that get super weird, I still enjoy those. So, and RIP to Corpse Party 2, because I don't feel like that's ever gonna finish coming out. They put out Chapter 1 like 8 years ago or something, and we're still waiting on Chapter 2. It's not happening. I'm bummed. But anyway. Persona Q, Shadows of the Labyrinth. This is actually pretty great. This is, I believe, a kind of a crossover with the Etrian Odyssey, at least in terms of gameplay. So you're dungeon crawling and mapping out the dungeon and fighting giant enemies called FOEs, I think. Yeah, FOEs, foes. And it's in the vein of Etrian Odyssey. I have not actually, as you can see from this list, I haven't played any Etrian Odyssey games myself. I have a bunch, or several, not a bunch. But I haven't played them yet. I'm collecting them, and I'm going to get to them. Anyway, yeah, so Persona Q is great. It combines Persona 3 and 4, the cast of those games. Tells a little sort of non-canon story, which is kind of a bummer. I wish they would canonize this stuff. But yeah, it's a cool game, and I really enjoyed it. Is it an A though? It's not an S, I can tell you that right now. Is it an A or is it a B? Well, I mean, if we're going off of gameplay alone, it's a B. But just the fact that it combined these two casts of characters that I love so much, I think I'm gonna put it as an A. It's an A. Yeah. Monster Hunter Stories. Monster Hunter Stories is a Capcom role-playing game, and it surprised me with like how high quality it is. Like it feels like a big budget AAA game, and I guess it is. You know, the 3DS was a big system, you know, by the end especially. So it's not like they put the B team on their 3DS games or whatever, but for some reason in my mind I just don't think of handheld RPGs as big budget things. But this looks really good. The gameplay is solid. It's turn-based. You and a monster partner can go out into battle, and you can capture monsters. You hunt, and well, you're not hunting in the sense that you do in the core Monster Hunter games. because you are a rider and you tame monsters and you ride them and be friends with them. And that's nice. That's good. So, yeah, it is very good. The story's a little lacking. I mean, you have a silent protagonist, so, I mean, since it's just you and your monsters, there's not a whole lot of character development happening. You do have one of the talking cats that goes with you and is essentially your voice, but that's irritating. You know, I mean, even though I don't hate the character, the cat, it's irritating, right? Like, they know it. They know it is. This is a B tier, just because I feel like it's an A tier game with a C tier plot. Averages out to a B. Shin Megami Tensei 4. So I've tried twice now to get into SMT4, and I don't know. There's like the premise is really interesting to me. Like the whole, and I guess minor spoilers for SMT4. I haven't gotten far, so I'm not gonna spoil much beyond like hour 5. But you know, this medieval world, and then finding buried underground like the city of modern day Tokyo, and demons everywhere, and like the premise is super intriguing to me. I loved SMT3. I'll say that on the PS2. I haven't played the remaster yet, but on the PS2, SMT3 was just great. It was just like, what do the kids say? Big mood. It was a big mood, and it was great. SMT4, I have not been able to connect with. Still, I can't say it's a bad game. It's SMT. It's everything that SMT is. So it's not a bad game. I gotta put it in C. Oof. Sorry, I know that just hurt some of y'all's feelings, and I'm sorry about that. Oof, I don't feel good about it, but that's just where I'm at right now. Maybe I'll try again one more time someday and get through it and love it, but it just was not working for me. Sorry. All right, Adventure Time. Hey, Ice King, why'd you steal our garbage? This is, I mean, kind of an RPG. I don't know. It's sort of a Zelda 2 clone, Adventure of Link, on the Nintendo. You know, so there's like, you know, side-scrolling battles, but you're on an overhead overworld, and I mean, you know, Zelda 2, right? So it's great. I mean, it's Adventure Time, which I'm a big fan of. I think I played this game actually before I watched the show. This was kind of my introduction to Adventure Time, and it got me to watch the show and get really into that. And I mean, it's not revolutionary as a game. It's not changing. It's not going to change your life, right? I don't know that I can say that it's an A for me, but it is definitely a solid B tier game. We're down to the end here. 2 more games. We got Bravely Default. Bravely Default suffers from one of the worst end games of any JRPG I've ever played, in that you have to, I guess, minor spoilers again, but you have to kind of loop through this part of the story multiple times, doing the exact same thing over and over and over. I think maybe the dialogue slightly changes each time, but like not in any super meaningful way. And there's a storyline reason that this is happening, but it is excruciating when you are so close to the end and you want to see how things resolve, and the developers are like, hold on. You're looking a little too eager. You're too excited about this. You need to slow your roll and just play through these parts over and over and over again. That was super upsetting. However, Bravely Default is such a magnificent game, from its characters and its story to the graphical presentation, just the way that the towns and everything just feel so alive and three-dimensional, despite kind of more or less being sort of 2D, but things just like pop out at you, you know, especially with the 3DS, but like even without it, it's just a gorgeous game. The music is, wow, it's very good. It is, I'm relieved that the series is continuing, that they brought out Bravely Default 2 on the Switch, because it is, I love the series. I love it. And I think I might call it an S. If you ask me on a different day, I might say it's an A, but I'm feeling particularly nostalgic for Bravely Default right now. So it's an S tier game for me right now. And it's fantastic, and if you haven't tried it, you really should. I really hope. There's a direct sequel that I haven't played yet on the 3DS called Bravely Second that takes place in the same world as Bravely Default. I hope that Square Enix does like a HD remaster of those two games and puts them on the Switch. It's kind of weird to me that they haven't done that. I would love to experience it that way, but I will play it on the 3DS if that is not going to be an option, because it's fantastic. Finally, Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. Now, I actually own the physical copy of the original Radiant Historia on the DS. I have not played that version, but I do have that. I do not have the physical version of Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology on the 3DS. That was another one that I reviewed, I think, again, for COG Connected. And so I had the review code, and I missed my opportunity to get this game. I think it was on clearance at Walmart for $10. And I was like, I wasn't really collecting games at the time, so I was like, nah, I have it. You know, I have the digital download or whatever. I don't need to buy this game physically. Why would I do that? Why would I buy it twice? The doy, right? So I missed out on it. And now it's very expensive. So, stupid me, right? But Radiant Historia is one of the best Japanese role-playing games, period. I mean, that's the end of the sentence. It is phenomenal. It is a masterful work. The battle system is super interesting. You have enemies on these different rows, and you can kind of push and pull enemies around to group them together so that you can attack multiple enemies at once and multiply your damage. It's super interesting gameplay. The time travel mechanic is not like Chrono Trigger, where you're, going to different time periods. Essentially, you have two parallel timelines that you're traveling along, and you will have to go back and forth between the timelines to change certain things so that you can advance on the other timeline. And so you get to see the same story kind of evolve in two completely different directions as you go throughout the course of the game. The characters are really interesting and cool. Stock as a main character is great. His party is fantastic. It's such a cool game, and the fact that all of these other 3DS games have been brought to the Switch or just modern platforms in general, and not Radiant Historia is just like, oh, Yoko Shimomura, man. Yoko Shimomura did the music for Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. It's great. It's 100% an S tier game. It is just amazing. It's an astounding game. Anyway, here you go. This is my list. Once again, there's no duds in here. Brandon don't buy no duds, right? Like I guess that can't be true. I must have bought some duds over the years, but none are coming to mind. But yeah, it's, I think some of it is also my instinct to not want to be overly critical. I don't want to be too mean, because every game has its fans, and I don't want to be the guy that tells you that the thing you like is trash, because I don't enjoy that when someone says that to me. So I want to be respectful of everybody's interests, while still being honest with you about how I feel about these games. So if you want to grade on a curve, then I guess the C tier games are the ones that would be somebody else's F or D or whatever. But really, I don't know. I don't think that any of the games on the C list are irredeemable or bad necessarily. I just think that they just didn't work for me. Anyway, these are the handheld Nintendo JRPGs that I've played. I think I covered them all. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure now. Let me know what you think of this list. Am I crazy? Like, tell me how I should have done this, because this feels right to me, but I'm sure I did something wrong here. So please let me know down in the comments. If you wouldn't mind liking the video, that helps the algorithm and tells YouTube to recommend me to other people. And I would really appreciate that. And if you're not subscribed, if you would consider subscribing, I'm really, really pushing to try to cross 6,000 before the end of the year. I think we can do it. Maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed. That would be a wonderful Christmas present to be able to give myself, I guess. Or I guess you would be giving it to me? I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And until next time,